Hi. Welcome to the Human Design for Marketing podcast. I'm your host, Yvette Mayer, and this show's for you if you're done with cookie cutter marketing and ready to build your personal brand in alignment with who you really are. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the Human Design for Marketing podcast. I am excited to be back in your ears. And this week's topic is going to be not just really valuable, but it's a bit of a teaching in itself and something that you can put into action. Now, there's a backstory. Last week, I just looked at this 8 days ago, as I record this on the 10th of September. Last week must have been on Monday, I shared it was a reel on Instagram that went a bit crazy, and it surprised me how crazy it went. It was about looking inside your bodygraph to understand your biggest block to growth on Instagram. Now, I had been looking at this myself through my own understanding of my chart, and it really blew my mind how much wisdom I got from doing this exercise. But it was something of a leap, if I'm honest, because it comes from work in the gene keys, which I'm going to explain this to you as a way of helping you go through this process yourself. And many of you have already done this because you engaged with the post I did last week. So within the gene keys, there is a sequence. There's 3 sequences, but there's a sequence called the prosperity sequence or the pearl sequence, which is really to help you explore how you are designed to make more money or experience more abundance. And like there are of the 3 different sequences, they're all really big opportunities to go deeper into yourself and to look at these energies in yourself and experience or understand yourself better. So I love this particular sequence. They're all great, but I love this sequence, which starts with your biggest block. And when you look at this placement in your chart, then it is going to be very informative for you around your business in general. But it is also highly insightful when you apply it to specific parts of your business. And that is the leap that I made in this post. So in today's episode, I am going to share with you more about this block on Instagram, its genesis, where it comes from. But what I didn't do over in that post was explain to you how you can actually work with this energy to transform. I want to provide a transformational teaching in this one. And so I'm going to give you a few things to do. A pen and paper is a great idea. I'll come back to this later, to take you not just into awareness, but deeper into being able to transform this and spend more of your time in a really positive gift frequency. So that's the main essence of today. I'm also going to share other ways that you can look at this kind of insight around marketing. Not just with this specific placement, but I have spoken on other episodes about working with kind of shadows and identifying with other people's, what they see in you is what you've healed to help them do the same. And I think using this similar process is actually some messaging gold in here as well, which I know you're always all about. So let's go. So as I said, in this Instagram post, I spoke about your biggest Instagram block. What I shared, and what I'd love you to do as well, is based on the Gene Keys Pearl sequence, the prosperity sequence. If you're newer to the Gene Keys, please go and have a look at them. The Gene Keys are a spin-off from the Human Design System by a man named Richard Rudd. He originally worked very closely with Ra Uruhu, so one of the early inner circle with Ra. At some point on the journey, they separated. I think they had a bit of a falling out. And Richard really went into this direction of going much, much, much deeper into each of the gates, but he reimagined them, called them the gene keys. And what I love about Richard is he has a very lyrical way of expressing the energies. So where Ra, who was born under the gate of shock, quite often speaks into the low frequency, even in the name of the gates, Richard goes through every gate, which he refers to as gene keys, and looks at the shadow frequency, the gift frequency, and the Siddhic state. He also looks at the shadow around whether you're repressing that energy or being reactive to the energy. And oh my goodness, it is so poetic, but also so deeply valuable. So that's what the gene keys are. They actually come from the I Ching specifically. And they do have variables based on the profile lines. So every gene key also has 6 lines. And when you're really getting into it and doing this work, you are going to look at both. But for the sake of this episode, we're talking about the gates or the gene keys and specific placements, starting with what is in the gene key prosperity sequence, your biggest block, to abundant career success, shall we say. So this placement sits in your Mars design side of your body graph. So this is on the left-hand side when you're looking at your body graph, where the Mars sign for the planet shows up. Gosh, you're going to have to go and look this up for yourself, but it's just about halfway down. Have a look if you don't know what the symbol is and locate your Mars design. So when we work with this in the gene key sequence, we're looking for, okay, this placement overall is known as your vocation. So what you are actually here to do to get paid for. So that's the overall essence of this placement in the gene key sequence. Already incredibly interesting, right? But you want to have a look at this because it's in the sequence of being paid more abundantly. The other thing about this placement is it's pointed out as the biggest thing that's going to stop you achieving this. So the low or the shadow frequency in this placement is the thing that is going to stop you having a successful vocation and being richly rewarded. There are other placements in this sequence that are focused on blessings and much more into what you're really programmed to radiate to unlock all of the abundance. But this placement is about vocation. So it's about work specifically, and the shadow is the block. And the gift is where you're actually recommended to spend most of your time. So I took a bit of a leap with this and was like, what about specific things about my vocation, like my Instagram account? If I look at this as a block to success here, what does that show up with? And it really did blow my mind. And so I shared that this was a really incredible thing to have a look at, to go and have a look at this placement to find out what is blocking you from Instagram success. Okay. So I did that, and this post went crazy. It had 67 likes, 100 comments, 10 shares, like for something that was like, this is really cool and really interesting. It kind of blew my mind just how much people responded and then related to it. So it wasn't just the idea, it was the holy moly, this is so true for me that came through, which meant that I needed to talk about this on the podcast. And that's what I'm here to do. So let's go a level deeper than just awareness here, because I know that that is what was available on the Instagram post. It's that came from my account. It was like, oh, I am now aware that this may be blocking me when it comes to my Instagram success. Today, let's get deeper than that into, so what? So what am I going to do about it? So that's why I say a paper and pen would be good for this, or to come back to this and do it in your own time. But I'm going to give you an exercise to take this to the next level. So firstly, I want you to go and find out about this gate or this gene key. So do your homework on this particular gate, whether that is through just Googling the gate and actually in particular, go to the Gene Keys website and look it up and write down for yourself the shadow and then the gift. And if it's not clear to you, do a little bit more research on the Gene Keys and this gate, and buy the Gene Keys book. Well, there's multiple books, but I'll link you to the one that I suggest you buy in the show notes, because then you're going to be able to look into every gate from a Gene Keys perspective, and it's really beautiful and very insightful. So I do recommend you have this book. If you want to go a step further, buy the prosperity sequence, and then you're going to have the digital version of not just this gate, but all the gates in the sequence. Okay, so you're going to do the research. Fun fact, every single week that we release a new gate into the transits on YouTube, we also release a companion blog post, which goes into all of this depth as well, that has the low and the high frequencies based on the Gene Keys, as well as an interpretation that is relevant for marketing. So at this point, we have published, I want to say 52 or 53 of 64 gates. So there's a good chance, like an 80% chance, that on my website, on the blog, you're going to be able to get to this information as well. So just know that that's another place you can go for these resources. And within the next couple of months, all of them are going to be there. So it's going to become your go-to for research around the gates and the Gene Keys as well. Okay, so you do this first. So you get the information. The next step is, I want you to write down for yourself, my biggest Instagram block is, and insert the word that is the shadow. So for me, mine is the 14. And in the Gene Keys, the shadow of this is compromise. Okay. Then you're going to ask yourself, based on what's showing up for you, how do I insert the word on Instagram? Or it could be, how do I experience insert the word on Instagram? So you're going to have to play with the language. Like for me, how do I compromise on Instagram isn't quite right, but I might say, how do I experience compromise on Instagram? Or how do I compromise myself on Instagram? Okay, so then doing the exercise, you're going to write that down, and you're going to start having a think about all of the ways that you do this, and just jot down some notes. So for me, it might be not speaking my mind. It might be feeling competitive and hiding out. It might be getting too attached to metrics and not allowing myself to be fully authentic. Whatever, like, you can feel this, right? These are all things that are true, and a little bit of insight into how you can do this for yourself. So that's number one. The second thing you're going to ask yourself is, when does this happen? When does this happen to you? Is it when you're tired? Is it when you've been scrolling and in a certain type of energy? Like, when is it happening to you or for you? But when does this happen? That's the next thing you're going to have a think about and write yourself out a list of. The third thing you're going to have to consider, when you are in this energy, what results do you get? What are the results? What happens because, in my instance, you're compromising yourself? So much richer than just awareness, right? Getting deeper into how this is actually surfacing for you and the implications. So this is just the first piece, because what we really want to expand into is the gift and even the citic state, because the way the gene keys are taught is that you only want to be in your shadow, or especially when you're aware of it, you want to acknowledge that it's there, but it's like 10% is in this shadow state and 90% is elevating, expanding, experiencing the gift state. And the more that you are in the gift, then the greater the opportunity is that you will access the citic state. This is the possibility that's available through being in the gift. And so with the 14, the gift is competence. The citic state is bounteousness. There's literally abundance. And so for me, the more that I am in the frequency of competence on Instagram, for this example, then the more I am going to experience bounteousness. Oh, that's very motivating, right? So for you, what I want you to start working with now is, okay, let's get into the gift. So think about this as your truth of the opportunity in your vocation. You are most successful in your work and getting paid for your work when you are in this gift. And this is true in the way you show up in Instagram as well. So for this one, we're going to look at it a little bit differently. So firstly, you're going to say, my truth is, and insert the word that is in the gift. Okay. Then I want you to have a think about, when do I experience this feeling or state on Instagram? Why does this happen is the next thing to ask yourself. So what is going on with you that puts you into this state? And then the last one is, what are the results when this is the way that you are showing up on Instagram? Okay, so I'm going to do those ones again because I don't think I was 100% clear, but for the gift, you're going to look at, when do I experience this? So when am I in a place where I feel incredibly competent, or I behave competently on Instagram? That's the first list. The next one is, why do I feel this way? Like, what is going on that has me in the right state or the frequency of competency? So that's going to get you into things like self-belief, right? And then the last one is, when I'm operating this way, what results do I get? So much richness here for you in relation to your own success on Instagram. You're going to get mind blown like me. And it's actually going to be very instructive and informative to take you out into experimenting with this energy and releasing that low frequency and knowing what is actually possible for you when you're in the gift. Now, I didn't want to finish there, because as I did this, I realized something, and that is that this process you can use with any part of your chart. And we've done this quite a few times on the podcast, where we're looking at the fact that quite often our ideal clients come to us because we've healed something that is in them. And so when we've spoken about things like messaging or finding our audience in our body graph, we're typically looking at that low frequency or the shadow state to gain insight about what our own ideal audience or clients are experiencing. And we are working with this energy to understand them and what they want, which is more of the gift, through the lens of our own story or our own experience, which is what we've done here, right? But what I'd like to get you to have a think about or explore is, okay, so what if I look at this, for instance, in other parts of my body graph that are really informative around my messaging, around my audience, around my content, and I do this same process. So you go deeper, right? You go a lot deeper and you start to list out when it happens, why it happens, what are the results of it happening. And I'm talking about the shadow. And then you look at that higher gift frequency of the how, the why, and the results for that. Do the same list process. What you're going to find is that you have just created yourself a huge amount of inspiration for content that is so freaking spot on. That is like mind reader content, because you are digging deeper into these placements and using your own lens of experience and understanding of healing to tell the story or share the possibility that has been realized by you. Isn't that beautiful? So that's where I'm going to leave you today. And yes, I also did this in a little bit of the essence of gate 47, which we're transiting through in the sun right now, which is the gate of realization, that is also about friction and growth and evolution and the process and what's possible when you move into the high frequencies. It's all related. But I know that there's some really amazing takeaways from this. It might be an episode you need to listen to a couple of times because it's that rich and it's that informative. And I know that when you do this in your own business and you relate it not just back to Instagram, but your marketing, your audience, your offer, like there is so much here for you. Now, before I go, exciting news. If you haven't gone and checked this out yet, I have just released Instagram by Design, which is a new, very low ticket, it's 37 Australian dollars right now, Instagram specific for your type class or training. It's available to buy and instantly access, and it is going to absolutely transform the way you think about Instagram, how you behave. It goes into, for you as an energy type, what to do, what not to do. It goes into how to hold your brand energy in that environment. It even gets into specific content to experiment with. There are 5 different types of content, like carousel, stories, video content, B-roll content, with actual suggestions on content to create that is going to really grow your impact, because it is so aligned to you as an energy type, and will put you into a place of not just experimentation, but actually enjoying the process. I've had a bit of feedback on this already because it's been a few days since I released it. And the biggest thing I'm hearing is that people are finding that they're getting told to actually be more them. So it feels very permission slip giving, and that it is like a breath of fresh air outside of, typical Instagram training, which is all blueprints and frameworks and do this, do this, do this. It's not that. It's empowering for you, and is going to give you that permission to go and create from a place of alignment, authenticity, and trust me, it's going to be the most effective way for you to approach Instagram as well. I'll be back in your ears soon. Don't forget to go to the description, or the show notes, I should say, and get your hands on Instagram by Design. Bye now. There are heaps more resources in the show notes. I can't wait to be back in your ears again soon. Bye for now.